back.
We know where Min is sitting.
Min is sitting in that blue chair right there.
Min's chair.
The chair we all have
Right next to you.
Okay, that would be good to know. Correct. We gotta move this camera then. Actually, Kim can sit on the floor.
Is Kim coming? If Kim comes, yes.
Also, I don't blame her. I don't like trying to fight that. Did she ask you to be here? Right, people at the back. If you want to be in the back, raise your hands high so I can see them.
Yo, folks in the back, raise your hands high if you want to be added to the stack so Stefan can write you down.
Also, any faculty. Yes. Wait, we're sitting in the chair.
You're welcome to sit here.
Yeah, stay like. I would be sitting down and not near the camera. The rest to try to be discreet. Yeah.
Was it Saturday?
What we're asking people to do is have the training speech.
All these notes taken. What I mean is there's a
They're here, they're here, they're here. They're here.
No, I know. I know you sent a note to staff about a meeting tomorrow. So yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah.
Seat 3.
Hey there. Can I sit on the floor? Is that okay? My preference. How's everybody?
Okay, so I'm just going to read through our agenda so you know what we have planned to talk about. First, we're going to just explain the structure of the meeting and talk about filming. Then we're going to spend 15 minutes talking about our demands. We're going to spend 10 minutes talking about communication, 15 minutes talking about our petition, and then we have an extra 15 minutes for whatever emerges.
Okay, so we'll finish by 5? Okay.
That's the goal.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So, Olavi, do you want to get the filming?
Sure. So we want to let you know that we are filming and recording this meeting, and that is very important to us because we as a movement are standing for transparency, and we feel it's very essential that the community at large be informed about what's going on here. So we want to be filming everything that's going on so that people can be informed and so that transparency can be made very clear. And we also want to provide both perspectives of the issue, and right now we only have perspectives coming from students, faculty, and staff, and we really want to start hearing the administration's voices within this movement, because that's been the biggest issue, is just a lack of communication between administration and the rest of the Hampshire community. So this provides an opportunity for us to inform the greater Hampshire community about what you guys stand for as administration and how you speak to us and how we can work together as a school. So it's very important that we continue doing this. We hope everyone's in support.
Do you want to say podcast or should I? Okay, yeah. So we're going to be running progressive stack in this meeting. The way that stack works, for those who don't know, it's one finger for a new topic. You raise your hand up, and Stephen, sorry, will take your name down. And and then 2 fingers for a direct response to what someone has said. And then we're running progressive stack, which means people who are visibly marginalized will be put on the stack ahead of everybody else. So that means visibly people of color and transgender, queer, and gender nonconforming folks.
And people with disabilities.
And people with disabilities.
And we're going to be very aggressive with time in this meeting. Like, a new topic will be limited to a minute and 30 seconds, and a direct response will be limited to 45 seconds.
And I'll be keeping time, so if you have only 10 minutes left, or 10 seconds left to speak, then I'm just going to raise my hand to let you know that you have to wrap up.
And we're also prioritizing students in this progressive stack as well.
It'd be helpful for me to know who's a student and who's alum, who's a parent, or it'd be really helpful.
Do we have time for that?
Or just raise your hands. I mean,
Maybe raise your hand.
If you're not a student. If you're not a student, please raise your hand.
okay, great. Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
facilitating this meeting? Okay, so we're doing demands. Okay, so so we're going into demands. Anybody? Should we start out with reading out the statement of demands?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wasn't the same statement before?
Yeah.
So it's just summarizing again, like where we stand. Like, what? Okay, so the three principles were what? Transparency, shared governance, and overall equity. To be fair, like at least in my opinion, like we see moving towards more transparency, but there's always work to do more, and that's why the demand is still there. Getting rid of NDAs was a good first step. The problems then come to the next two demands that we have had little, if any, motion at all, and that's regarding shared governance, specifically the trustee, the two spots empty in the board of trustees, the options committee, and understanding like the options committee, and then also if there's that new committee that's being formed talking about being independent, student representation there as well. And the overall equity demands is that while you said the option committee is charged with them, there's still like students still feel like those overall equity demands should be stronger in language. And there was that step forward by adding to the guiding principle, but they aren't talking about specific types of services and programs. That's my understanding. And else got anything else to add to that?
Do we want a refresher of the statement of demands? I'm not going to read the whole thing, just go into the bullet points that are explicit about the specific demands that we want. Under transparency, we have dissolving the non-disclosure agreements. We asked under Hampshire shared governance that the remaining two positions of the board of trustees be filled with an elected student representative by the student body. We also asked that the Hampshire Constitution be revised. We asked for the preservation of the core of Hampshire's educational model under overall equity. We asked acknowledgement of anyone participating in organization is not penalized. We also asked that affinity spaces like the Cultural Center, the Baldwin Program, and other affinity-related groups be preserved through the merger, as well as attention and solidarity with faculty, staff, alumni demands.
Which are various.
Yeah. So we can go through them, I guess, one by one, starting with transparency.
Which I just want to make sure everybody has the document that we posted, which is, I look at Andrew and some others, because we have posted all the updates. But I'm happy to go through, if you want, we could go through all of the things that we have done. But it seems like I'd rather move forward. But it'd be good to be acknowledged for the things that have happened. But if you don't want to, that's okay.
So I think.
After we go through the bullet points, Lex has some comment.
Okay. I think we should. I forgot what this was. Well, I think we're all aware of what the demands are, and so we should go into the discussion and Lex has on the topic.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's come out of like these past like week of announcements and interactions between senior leadership and Hamp Rise Up like activists is that something that like hasn't been shown through in our demands is effective structural and representative power for students, specifically the Board of Trustees demand that we have, and that the options committee does not fill that representative void for students in terms of like creating like a communicative relationship with other members of the student body and having representative power in the middle of a financial crisis. And like when we talk about these demands, I think those are very glaringly obvious in the sort of concessions that have been made by senior leadership, and they kind of undermine the mass majority of students, over like 300 that have been involved in Hamp Rise Up since we started organizing a month ago.
questions?
Marla.
And specifically, like at least for some of us, our understanding is that like you are not the only person who makes these decisions, and we know that. But we're hoping, one, that you advocate for us rather than like resist us. And the second thing is that there are some demands that you do have control over, which is like the options committee, and that was your choice to appoint people and not allow us to choose representatives, and continue to not allow us to choose representatives on that committee, and any other executive committee that's formed, because they don't follow the same bylaws as the board does.
Do you want me to respond, or do you, I mean, I know there's a stack, so I'm, but I'll wait. Yeah.
Direct response from Sarai.
And I'd also like to sort of, off on that, review sort of the reasons why we have blended committees, and like sort of a further understanding of your definition of representation.
Do you want me to respond?
Would you like to respond?
Sure. Yeah, thanks.
Direct response from Miriam.
I'll try to keep it to 45 seconds. A lot of discussion has gone on with, within the trustee and governance committee of the board. You, and cut me off when I get to 45 seconds, because I'm only going to get to be able to do a little bit of this. And there are a number of different types of expertise that we're looking on the board. One is, if you look at our mission, which is around changing higher education, we have very few external higher ed people. Okay, I'll stop.
Direct response from Marla.
Can we get more time on what we're doing? I understand like all responses, but like if President Mim is responding to multiple comments, I guess there needs to be more time.
So we're really looking at the board moving forward and looking at not representation necessarily, but expertise around different areas, and really thinking a lot about this part of our mission, which is changing higher education. And part of that is making sure that you have people that are external to Hampshire, so that they can be deep in this to take the information out. So that's just a piece of this. The board is very clear that right now we're going to stick to the elected student and staff and alternate. And so that is the plan of the board, and that's a decision that they get to make.
We have two direct responses from Sarai and Andrew.
I have a question about the kind of expertise you're looking for on the board. I don't understand what you're missing. I think we all
Well,
know.
Yeah, some discussions right now.
Yeah, we're
You're-
sorry.
And I do, I guess, understand the implications of whatever financial crises or higher ed crises we may have, but that's not something that can be trained. Very many of us are competent in the issues that you're looking at, and I think that if you took the time to give us an explanation of what kind of expertise you're looking for, we'd find the perfect people for you.
Direct response from Andy and then Andrew,
Sorry.
and we are only taking staff from students.
It's actually a direct response to an earlier thing, so there were people on responding before me.
Andrew.
So just going off what you said, on the idea of expertise, it's important that I think you try to hear it from our perspective what expertise sounds like. Expertise sounds like something that's both classist and meant to withhold student voices, that it's saying you don't have a voice at the table because you aren't smart enough, whereas this entire campus has more knowledge than we could possibly need to overcome what is happening.
Okay, so, it sounds like you want a lot of different types of experience on the board. You want people with like different ways they view the world. That's what diversity gives you. If you have diversity, if you have representation from people of color, from people with disabilities, from queer people, then you have those perspectives you're looking for.
I agree. Yeah.
It doesn't seem like you do.
Well,
Would anyone like to go to staff?
I
So
will-
a new topic.
I guess it's a new topic.
Okay.
And it still doesn't explain, I think, like, while we can talk about the board and, like, for time's sake, I guess we'll leave it there, you still haven't responded as in why you continue to be unwilling to have elected representatives in the options committee. And that's something you have complete control over, that's your decision only.
well, it's not my, I mean, oh, sorry.
Want to respond?
Yeah, I'll wait. I'll wait.
You just have to do this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I'll wait because there's probably others that want to talk.
No, you're the only direct response.
Okay. The original plan was actually this was going to be even a much smaller group, and right now there are 9 different people on this plus Ava and Mary, and we feel that the group right now has they're creative, imaginative, and there are many creative, imaginative people that are out there. But this group is highly functional and working really well. This is not a decision-making group. This is a group that is just engaged deeply in the work. And we need to move with this committee. And I don't have a better answer for you, and I'm not going to satisfy everybody. So.
We have direct responses from Naya, Dory, and Liam.
So, just like what it sounds like you're saying is that you're not going to satisfy that this committee that you're choosing people on is not going to satisfy everybody, but students are telling you that like if you don't move with us, we'll stop your movement, and that's what we've been doing. And so like I don't know, I guess I just advise you like think about like the actions that you're taking and like what that means, because students also have a decision to say, okay, well you're doing this without our say or our say so, and so we can choose to act accordingly.
The stack now is Dory, Liam, and Andrew.
I just wanted to point out that by going back over like the number of people and how it was originally going to be a smaller group doesn't address what we are talking about or asking of you. It's not really about how small or big it was intended to be. What we're saying is that it's not adequate for us. And so I just would appreciate if you could directly answer the question that's being asked rather than going back through primary iterations that are no longer relevant.
The stack is Liam, Emery, Andrew.
Yeah, I actually just want to bring up a quote that we have from this last Thursday, which when we also asked you about the options committee, you said that you felt that sometimes representation is not what is needed, or democracy is not what's needed. And I'm wondering if you still stand by that, and if that is in fact like why this is not.
Can I have a direct response? Or not?
Specifically,
I'm okay with that.
Miriam, the direct response.
Sure. We have 2 students, awesome 2 students. We've got staff, we've got faculty, awesome people. And so we don't have alumni on that group, we don't have parents on that group, we don't have community members on that group. So we've got, I mean, it depends on how you define representation. There are many different ways, but we've got different people, and I will tell you, for anybody that's in that group, we have really disparate voices and challenging voices, and so that's what we've got.
We have direct responses from Desta, Liam, and Marlon, and then going back and sorry, and then going back we have one from Emery as well.
Yeah.
So Desta.
I would like to reiterate Dory's statement, which is that I don't think you answered the question. And yeah, just naming the ways in which there is difference on the committee and what difference is missing is not answering Liam's question about democracy and
whether or not you think diversity is an integral part of.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is, and on that
Breaking
committee, we
staff.
have diversity. Sorry.
Do you want to respond?
Sure. We have diversity on that committee. I believe we have diversity of opinions. I believe we have diversity of backgrounds. I think we have diversity of experiences. And at some point, you also have to have a committee that is a size where every voice can be heard in an hour and that is nimble enough. So I do feel that we have it.
Our stack is Sarai, Naya, Liam, Jake, and then I'd like to go back to Emery. Andy, would you like to be added to the stack as well? So, Sarai.
So I think diversity does nothing when the loudest voices on the Board of Trustees are like 5 main people. I think Kim Sala has been the loudest voice, and maybe you. Bringing up something else that you said when we were back in Blair is that you needed 18 months to elect people to the Board of Trustees, and that you wanted to make that decision communally and to make that diversity something that means something, but it didn't mean anything when you made that decision on January 15th, did it? So I guess like you can't blame us for not trusting. You know.
Stack is Dewan, Naya, Liam, Jake.
We're throwing around words like diversity and representation, and as someone who was the student on looking for the Chief Diversity Officer of Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity, we need to also be talking about not only inclusion and equity, but also justice. So what does it look like when you say that it had to be a small group of people? What does it look like with those small groups of people, folks who usually don't have access to those seats or usually aren't included in those conversations? How are they put at the forefront when it comes to, if not making decisions, at least talking about the decisions that need to be made?
We're closing stack because we're running over time on this section, so we're gonna finish the stack and then Miriam, you can respond at the end.
Marlon, you were the last person in the stack. So the stack is Naya, Liam, Jake, Emery, Marlon, Andrew. Emery, Marlon.
When a marginalized group of people tells you that they do not feel represented, that they do not feel that their, quote, representatives in a group are sufficient, it is not appropriate for you to tell that marginalized body that they are wrong about their own representation. And given the power dynamics of a school system, students are the marginalized body. We are the some of the most least respected voices on this campus and in this committee, and we as a student body are saying we do not feel represented, and I don't necessarily feel it's appropriate for you to tell us that that is not the case.
Okay, I hear you.
I do want to pin this down because I think that things may have accidentally become tangential, so I'm wondering if you could comment specifically on not diversity, even though that's also important, but is democracy not needed?
Democracy is needed.
Is democracy not needed
But
in
democracy,
this group?
We've got so many different groups here that are working on so many, sorry, I'm not supposed to respond. I'm sorry. Yep.
Liam, is it important that?
No, I won't respond.
I
don't need to.
I think eventually,
Yeah.
as this goes on,
Yeah.
perhaps that question will
I'm
hopefully
sorry.
be addressed.
Alright, stack is Jake, Emery, Marlon.
So, you said, like, we have a lot of, or, there is, like, a lot of diversity in the voices that are being represented by your committees and stuff like that. You did say that, yes?
I feel that way on those committees.
Okay.
But there are other people on the committee, so that.
So, like, during the fishbowl meeting, I'm not really recalling the date, but Kim Saul said that we can't afford diversity at this campus. So that statement about we have a lot of diversity within the voices that are represented seems to be it could like fall through because those points are very contradictory, entirely contradictory.
Emery?
Yeah, so I think like as someone who is on the options committee and a student who is holding that position, I think like what has been particularly frustrating is just that like I already hold a lot of positions on this campus. I was on the visioning task force. I'm an elected representative of SAN. I hold a lot of privilege on this campus. And that means I was already included in so many conversations about all of this. And so when I was asked to be like part of more conversations, like I'm super down for that because obviously like I like, you know, wrote my application for SAN and like wrote my application for the visioning task force because I like really care about this stuff and like, but that being said, like if I was already participating in so many of those conversations and my voice already had all that power, like it didn't need to have any more power. And I think that that is what has frustrated everyone and like including me. And I just think like, I think it would be really, I don't really feel like I hold any, like I know I don't really hold any expertise, like just because like I don't understand finances, like I don't, you know, and I think like any student, I'm sorry, yeah. Word.
Second to Marlon, and then we'll move on to section 2.
Yeah, my thing is that we're talking about diversity, we're talking about representation, we're talking about expertise, but our specific demand is on representatives. That means they are chosen either through an elected body like the Student Advocacy Network or by the entire student body. And that is how we know, because we trust students to choose the right representatives that we get. Emily and Dyer probably would have been the top choices for that committee. But it's not what you do that makes it radical, it's how you do it. And there's processes we expect that is followed so we can actually make sure that we have everyone's voice at the table and no one's excluded. And this is, again, something you can change tomorrow even. SAN meets tomorrow night.
Miriam, do you have any responses?
Nothing more than I've already said, so let's move on. Yeah.
So next we're going to talk about communication and specifically,
Oh wait, I do have one, if it's okay, I have one response. I feel that remark about Kim Saul is very much taken out of context. The issues right now for us are that we are so lean on our support of students. We are so lean that we can't do the work that we want to do with students and have the support for students. And so I feel that comment was taken out of context. So.
Okay, so next we have communication.
Who'd like to start? Naya?
Direct response to the comment that you just said, I don't know. I just feel like regardless of if it was taken out of, like, you guys are paid to do this. Like, this is your job. You should know that if you say something like that, like, you can't just say, oh, diversity, like, we can't afford diversity at the school and think that, like, black and brown students aren't gonna get scared because we literally, like, there's a lot of people who could not go to college were it not for the fact that Hampshire allows diversity to exist here. So, like, I don't know, you just have to, like, put two and two together. Like, it's not that hard.
But this kind of does lead into like a communication thing, and realizing that the language and words that you guys choose, just as much as the way you choose to do things, has power. How transparent you are, what language you use. For example, you said, oh, we were talking about, you know, having changes and finding a partner since like November and all of that. But that's very different than saying a possibility of a merger. And this is what I mean, like that's like the lack of transparency in their language. That like it's one thing to say, oh, I said it, but if you can't say it in a way that everyone can understand it, you're not being transparent and you're not communicating in good faith.
A direct response from Elle.
And when it comes to transparency, you have a lot of privilege when it comes to having information that we don't have. And it is so important that we trust you, because if there's no trust in our board of trustees, there's no trust in our president, then there's a lot of scaredness there. And especially when we hear something like, we can't afford diversity at our school, like Naya was saying, no matter the context, it's terrifying to hear that. Especially when Hampshire is built on diversity. That is what this school is, and that's why we come here.
Can I have a direct response?
Yes.
I couldn't agree with you more. We absolutely have to. I mean, the core value of this college is around diversity, equity, inclusion, diverse perspectives. That's core. We have to make sure that we maintain that we support it, and that it flourishes. And I'm concerned right now because the way our financial situation is, that we can't do that, and we have to be able to do that. So. Yeah. No, that's okay.
Stack is. Yeah. So we have two direct responses from Dory and Dave.
With regard to everything that you just said, when concerns were raised about the Cultural Center and the James Baldwin programs, why that has any sort of question at all, if you consider to hold diversity in such high esteem. I'm not really sure why those programs are even possibly considered disposable. So I'm just not sure about that.
Can I?
Direct response from Miriam.
I would never categorize them as disposable. And I think a core, we've added it to the core principles. This is a big discussion piece. I would, if it's okay, I'd like to use the words from a faculty of color who in one of our meetings said,
Don't tokenize them. Go and speak with them. Yeah. Please don't do that.
Direct response from Dave.
Yeah, so you said, your efforts here, and I'm paraphrasing, are to preserve Hampshire, to preserve our mission, our value, which you described as diversity and inclusion and having diverse voices. But the process to preserve that mission has not included any of those values.
Direct response from Liam, then new topic from Sarah.
Just quickly, I wonder, what is the difference between disposable and negotiable?
shutting down the college is a real issue for us. And sorry.
Please just raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to respond, 2 fingers.
Well, when there's a question, when somebody asks a question, it's hard not to answer it. So I will wait and not answer. I will not. That's okay. I won't answer.
Raise 2 fingers first and then answer, because you will be called upon.
Yeah, we pay you to be the president. You can't raise your hand.
Yeah.
All right, stack. Miriam, that's all right.
Okay. I do not want this college to close. There are a whole host of different things that have to be considered with this college moving forward. And preserving jobs is critical, and our educational mission. And all I can say is we're working as hard as we possibly can, deep conversations to make this happen. And I will just say a critical element of this is the James Baldwin program. It has come up in conversations. I can't say much more than that, but it is critical.
Stack is Dewan, Andrew, and then I'd like to get started.
You said that the CC and the James Baldwin program were part of the core principles and that they were critical. And I want to ask you if those are the same things as non-negotiable.
No, they're not. Oh, so they're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andrew?
We know you don't want the college to close, but we think that what you think it means to keep the college open looks drastically different than what it means to us. Mm-hmm. And so even hearing that still isn't reassuring, because it still feels like the mission and the skeleton of what this college stands for that you want to maintain still feels like the death of what it means to all of us. Mm-hmm. And that's why we've been reaching out to alums, and that's why we've been reaching out to staff and faculty. And so from the conversations that we hear from faculty, from the meeting that you had with them last week, to the alums who are like some of the top donors, and they say, we have not been reached out about this. And so when you say that you've reached out to them and that you're trying to keep the college alive in a way that like we can understand, it just feels like an entirely false narrative. The idea of saying that like I'm not going to take a pay cut while other people get fired.
New topic from Sarai.
Yeah, on that, just a little bit about me. I'm a Baldwin Scholar. And so on the topic of communication, I'd like to know, A, why you haven't communicated anything with the Baldwin Scholars. Typically, the president meets with us every year to talk about things that we would take issue with, for example, and things that we need. And you haven't yet done that. I don't even think you know who the Baldwin Scholars are in this room. And that's disappointing. Second of all, I'd like to know exactly why staff, faculty, and students have been hearing different things communicated from you. And I think that's caused a lot of concern. Things that we can prove, by the way.
Okay,
Would you like to respond?
Yes. I'd like to meet with the Baldwin Scholars. I've met with some of them. I've met with Karina several times. I would like to do that. So that's an open invitation. And I'd like to, I've been trying to be as thoughtful as I can, meeting with so many people all day long, including alums all weekend long. I'd be happy to hear where I've contradicted myself, so that would be very helpful.
All right. New topic from Marlon. Unless anyone has any direct responses.
I think like with communication, it's kind of hard to separate the shared governance question or that. You keep saying I have deep conversations, I'm reaching out to all these people, but deep conversations aren't useful for communication. What's more useful is that inclusion in conversations and communication. And while you're reaching out to many people, this is the benefit of having representatives, is that they can help do that work for you. If they're elected, you speak with them, they speak to their constituencies. It's a lot better of a channel than you trying to pinpoint and choose who might be a representative for someone. Because we know who we trust to speak for us.
Would you like to respond? Right. Staff, we've reached the bottom of it. If anyone would like to say something, please.
I just also you can be meeting with all these different constituencies and whatever, but if the information is inconsistent or withholding or then it's not meaningful. And also just in the what you just said to Dewan, I feel is inconsistent to call the James Baldwin Scholars and the CC critical, but also not non-negotiable. Doesn't critical mean essential and necessary? Yeah.
I believe it is, but I can't.
We have a direct response from Jim.
So, in terms of you saying that you've met with James Baldwin Scholars and that point, it shouldn't have taken this long for you to say that to everybody here, or just to say that you'll meet with or open an invitation to more James Baldwin Scholars. It shouldn't have gotten to this point.
Would you like to respond?
Fair enough. I said fair enough. Yeah.
We've reached the bottom of the stack. Andrew, direct response.
I think it's helpful to frame everything that's been happening these past few months against the conversation of what we would imagine a president that represents us to do. And so we would imagine a president that represents us to come here the moment that we started sitting in and not let us kick them out of their office because they're going to say, we have to work together because I care about you. And so even the act of leaving was saying that you're annoying me, I have to go. And that's just showing that our voices don't matter. It's saying that I can go work in the Kern, you want to go take over my office, fine.
Can I have a direct response? Yes. I can just speak personally. I felt like we had a lot of dialogue and then it just broke down because we met all the demands as rapidly as we possibly could, working with all of you, and Well, we did. We met a number of the different demands. And then it just got so there wasn't anything I could say that would help. And so that got very difficult. So
Direct responses from L, Marlon, Andrew.
So when you say that you've met our demands, could you give examples of how you've met our demands? Because I'm not seeing how you've met any of our demands thus far.
Other than that.
Yeah, other than NDAs.
I'll let Jenny maybe. Is Jenny here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jenny stepped out.
Oh, she did. Okay. When we met, it was now a couple of weeks ago. Oh, I'm sorry. When we met a couple of weeks ago, and we sat here and we worked on the NDAs. We also had, I should have that document in front, we came up with additional things that we wanted to do together. There was also that we would put this on the agenda for the board around the two student to be added to the board. To find a communal space for all of you to be able to meet with on a regular basis, to have shared meals so we could have more conversations. There were a number of different things there, which we've posted and we've updated as we've gone. So we did a number of the things that we could do.
The stack is Lily, Marlon.
So it seems to me that how, from what you're saying, to me it sounds like you are saying that the phrase meeting our/your demands means meeting one of our explicit demands stated in our document and then adding in your own set of demands. Whereas from our perspective, meeting our demands means to us looking at that list and literally checking off bullet point by bullet point. Have we met them? Yes. Have we met them? No. Have we met them? No. And so a majority of the demands that we had explicitly written down have not yet been met, hence why we're still here.
Yeah.
The stack is now Marlon, Naya.
And to get specifically to it, because I have the draft, yes, you got rid of NDAs.
Yeah.
But you also said that you're creating a new committee that became the options committee. While we did ask for a committee to be formed to help with choosing a partner, we asked for representatives, not for a committee. So saying you made a committee means you're not actually meeting our demand. The third is that conversations with the board that isn't on demand, that's working on our demand, and it came back as a no, so you didn't meet that demand. And will confirm with faculty entities have requested additional financial data and overall transparency. We asked that transparency to be given out to the entire campus, and we asked through multiple mediums, multiple accessible mediums, and that hasn't been done either. So actually, I think like if you look at it, like the NDAs was a good step, creating the options committee was a good step, but after that moment, how you chose who would be in those conversations with you was actually completely against our demands.
All right, time's up.
So stack is.
It's time for session.
Okay, so I'm closing stack after we get through the 4 people who are in stack, which are Naya, Liam, Andrew.
Okay, so I just want to refresh you on like what a demand means because I don't think you're clear. A demand means like we're demanding. It's not negotiable. It's not like, oh, you're working on it. Okay, so we'll like step back. No, demand means you meet it or we continue to organize. So.
May I? A direct response? And I don't have, the answer for the 2 people on the board is unfortunately not. And so that's an answer. So I recognize that we have not met your demand. So I just want you to know we do recognize that. Yeah.
One, recognition is not meeting them. And, like, I know that you don't have power over everything, but there needs to be some creativity and there needs to be some major push. Also, we laid out, like, after the meeting that we had where you said you were meeting some of our demands, we laid out extremely, extremely specific ways in which you could meet those demands and the steps through which we would know you were working on meeting those demands. And we have heard nothing on any of that. And also, one of the things that we laid out very specifically was that these demands or significant progress on each of the demands would be done by March 1st. It is March 4th.
We're we're gonna get through the two people left on
Okay.
stack, and you have an opportunity.
Okay, that's fine.
Liam, Andrew.
I just want to say that a lot of the things that you are proposing doing, which are lovely things, like creating a space for us to meet, a student union, or like having lunches with you, these community lunches with
you guys had talked about it, so yeah.
Well, perhaps but those were not in our demands, and like I can't speak for for Rise Up Hamp as a whole, but from my own standpoint, those look far more like, I don't know, pacifications than demands, and like it doesn't look like actually meeting our needs, but I don't know, throwing a bone to us so that we'll get out of your office.
Next is Andrew.
I just want to point out that in one of our earlier meetings in this office, you explicitly said that you were going to give the raw data to the faculty that demanded it from their constituents, and we've heard from faculty that even though you told us you were going to do that by the next Tuesday, that you never did that, and that's an example of miscommunication.
Direct response from Miriam.
So there are now even more faculty on the Budget and Priorities Committee, and they are very involved in all of this. That is the committee from which the data comes. There's financial data that you just don't share with the whole world, and so the Budget Priorities Committee, the issue right now is we actually need to add more staff to the Budget Priorities Committee because we've lost staff, and so we are actually looking to make sure that we've got a number of staff and faculty on that. So, and that is a very working committee right now. So, yeah.
Direct response from Professor Hamilton.
That's inaccurate. It's inaccurate because I've seen the data that was released until recently. I was on the Budget and Priorities Committee. I resigned. Someone else has taken my place, so I know what's been released. It is not raw financial data. It is at best projections, at which we do not understand where the numbers come from, and we asked specifically for the numbers that led up to the January 15th decision, and we have not seen those.
Alright, so we're moving on to talk about our petition. Yeah, you should introduce.
Okay.
Take it away, Marlon.
So over the week, we've been canvassing, circulating, and getting student feedback on a petition of no confidence. Replicating the first attempt from faculty, we list out different positions and the people that hold those positions and let students choose the different ones. We've finished canvassing, so we have a petition of no confidence, and the different people got different percentages of what we think was the student body. We're talking about raw numbers, like we got hundreds and hundreds of signatures, so yeah, I think that's a way to start off with. And what I would think is interesting that shows about the lack of transparency is that I think some people were saved from the petition of no confidence just because no one had information from the student body about these people and what they're doing, which just echoes that lack of transparency.
We have a new topic to read.
I'm sorry, I had been waiting for a section that I thought existed but didn't, so I'll say this now. Oh, can you not film me, by the way? I look ugly right now. I'm just really sick. So just on Thursday, I had a wonderful opportunity to talk with you one-on-one for quite a while. And during that time, you told me that the board's responsibility, their primary responsibility, was first and foremost to the mission of the college. And I quote you there. And I also want to say that I'm doing my best to paraphrase directly, so please don't, sugarcoat this. I just want you to confirm it or deny it. I clarified at that time that this would mean prioritizing the mission over the direct interests of the community, meaning staff, faculty, and students, and you confirmed that. True or false, or, did I paraphrase poorly?
May I?
Yes.
You can't separate the two, but the mission, you can't separate the two. But the mission in terms of the state of Massachusetts, in terms of the laws, the board's primary responsibility is to the mission of the college. But you can't separate people out from the mission or the work of people, which includes the students, alumni, parents, faculty, and everybody. So. And I think that's how I said it.
Stack is Naya, then Reed.
If you cannot separate the mission from the faculty, staff, and students, if you cannot separate the faculty and staff and students from the concept of the college itself, why is it acceptable to lay off 30 to 50% of faculty and staff without trying to find an alternative way to keep them?
Yeah, I thank you, Naya. I just had a little bit to add to that. I will just openly state a suspicion that I and many others have had, which is that the college, and when I say this, I mean the board, has had an interest in downsizing the college for a merger independent of any financial crisis, and that the financial crisis simply serves as, and I'm not saying it's completely false, I think there are some realities to it, but it serves as a nice backdrop and justification for that downsizing. And that you confirmed this on another comment that happened shortly after that other conversation that, sorry, that distracted me, that whether we had a merger or not, and whether we had details about that or not, you couldn't give a bottom line for layoffs. They would happen no matter what. Whether we got money, whether we didn't, whether we merged or not.
That's fine.
Direct response from Miriam.
Boy, I just have to say, I'm just so feel like I'm in an alternative universe here. I am working so effing hard to find alternatives so that we don't lay people off. But right now, unfortunately, if we don't lay people off, we're going to be closing the school. So we have to be doing this. It is awful. I've said this before, and I will tell you, I am fighting like you can't even imagine to maintain our independence. It's critical. So I'm looking at all of these things. It's just that because of conversations, we can't have some of these conversations be public right now, or we lose our best opportunities. So I'm just going to stop with that.
All right, we have 5 direct responses from Naya, Desta, Marlon, Ali, Andrew.
I'm gonna say students have also been working very effing hard, and you get paid to work effing hard, so work. Do your work. We pay you to do this. It's not that hard. I'm sure, you guys, you have a certain financial, stability where you can, make yourself feel better, self-care in certain ways. Students don't have the same access to those things. So, I don't know. I'm just confused. What alternate universe are you living in? Maybe it's an alternate universe of white, privilege. So, I don't know. Maybe somebody needs to check that, or I don't know. Sorry. Rambling.
I'm curious as to how exactly spelled out the school has to close if you don't lay off faculty and staff. I'd like to really understand the direct correlation between those two things.
Would you like to respond?
Sure. We don't have a ton of cash reserves in this college. We run very leanly. And so our revenue has to meet our expenses. And when it's not terribly difficult math, but when our expenses exceed our revenue, then at some point in time you can't pay payroll and we can't keep the lights on. So it's related to us being able to have the finances in order to continue to run this place, which includes paying for people and paying for the facilities to stay open and other things. So we have to match the two together.
So Stack is Marlon, Savvy, Annie, Ali, Emily, Andrew.
What comes, the board keeps quoting, and you keep quoting that you guys have the fiduciary responsibility to the Hampshire's mission. And I think about that, and I think in my head, how is the board fulfilling the fiduciary responsibility they have, but having the longest college sit-in in U.S. history happen right now? How is it by allowing us to slow it down? How is it by not meeting our demands that is helping the mission? And how is that by not including us? Because honestly, especially some members of the senior leadership, they've been here as long as some of the Div 3s. You are here in your first year. We know Hampshire's mission more. The faculty knows Hampshire's mission more. We understand because we make up that mission, part of it, and also because we've lived with it longer. And I think it's hypocritical to say otherwise.
Savvy is next to Stack.
So on the fiduciary responsibilities of the school, based on the budget projections that were given to the Budget and Priorities Committee, you know, cutting the faculty is only increasing our debt, which doesn't really add up. When the story you told us was that we have to sacrifice faculty because we're sacrificing students by not taking the F-19 class, and because otherwise we would have more financial problems. But it seems our financial problem only gets worse the more students and faculty you lose. So I'm just curious as to how that fits in this whole narrative.
Next in stack, unless you have response.
It's okay.
On the subject of the financial situation and our reserves and potential partial solutions to it, I think that it's important to bring up again the question of pay cuts for senior leadership, which would be a way of helping deal with the financial reserves or to keep more faculty and staff on, which I think we all want very much.
The stack is Allie, Emery, Andrew, and then Sarai with a new topic.
So pretty much what Annie said, but also we need to realize that the $350,000 a year salary that you get does not include vacation time and sick time, health insurance, life insurance, all these other benefits. You say that you want to preserve jobs and that is important to you, but if you went down to that $120,000 a year cut that faculty suggested, even if that only saved 2 jobs, isn't that worth it to you?
Nope, I don't have one.
Alright, stack is Emery, Lex, Andrew.
Yeah, so I think like on the like nature of just like us all like not really knowing things and transparency, like I heard you say that like we're looking for like that you are searching for like alternative solutions, so that like even if we do have to find a partner or a merger or like, you know, whatever you want, like strategic partnership, like that, like there are like that you are searching for like ways. I don't really know what those are, and I think like if you do have them, like if there's like sharing them with the community so that they at least know that like even if things aren't possible and don't end up working out, that at least like those efforts are being made, I think would really help. And I'm confused why anyone would not want it, like why any of those things would be like, you know,
Stack is Lex, and then Andrew, and then we have 2 new topics from Sarai and
Yeah, at 5 o'clock.
You're saying that I think it's extremely unethical that faculty healthcare and staff healthcare were slashed earlier in the year, and y'all still get the paychecks that you do. Anybody in senior leadership does.
Andrew?
A huge percentage of the people on this campus are demanding that you and a number of other people step down, and when you say that you feel like you're in an alternative universe, we feel that way talking to you because everybody else on this campus is in our universe.
Do you have a response?
All I can say is that this is finding a solution so that we can make sure our mission moves on, that we preserve as many jobs as we possibly can so our current students could get Hampshire degrees is the absolute goal here. And we're working as hard as we possibly can. There are some potential opportunities that we are working to make sure that we preserve the most independence that we possibly can, including full independence. All of these things are being worked on really hard.
Direct response from Gabe, and then a new topic from Sarai.
And it's 5 o'clock, so we need to finish in the next 5 minutes. So we said it would be an hour. It's just I have to get to another meeting, so.
You said something about making sure our current students get degrees. What about future students? Do you care about them?
I care deeply about them. I care deeply about future students. I want Hampshire degrees forever.
Sarai, you with a new topic.
I guess this is kind of but I wanted to take us back to the petition of no confidence and sort of explain a lot of the reasons why we have no confidence in your leadership, including the term that you've been using, fighting. We have a lot of alum testimony that says that you did not, in fact, ask them for donations. A lot of top donors that we've been in contact with. And if it has anything to do with cash reserves, I'm pretty sure that Margaret Cerullo can point you to some pretty good resources. I'd also implore you to explore options within the 5 colleges, especially since most of the presidents seem like to not have had any information about what's going on. Another item on, sorry, I'm just trying to go as fast as I can. Another item on in the terms of no confidence is that I feel and actually can validate that most of the committees that you've made know absolutely nothing about what's happening in terms of visioning. And I'm sorry, like, please don't look confused, because I think the data that you've given us at least suggests that the financial crises going on seems manufactured. What else? And we also, yes, the finances seem manufactured to get into a merger.
Can we do bullet points, because we gotta get to Andy.
Yeah. The last thing, I guess we've all been living on 20K and don't want a merger that doesn't respect the fact that our finances are the way they are.
New topic for Andy.
So talking to the various teachers who I have had to teach classes over the past few years, the various faculty, some friends on staff, it just seems like you have not been answering their questions. It seems like in this meeting you have not been answering our questions. We touched on this in the communications section, but even when you do respond, which, to be fair, in this meeting you have responded, it's just you haven't responded with answers. You've responded with a lot of buzzwords, you've responded with a lot of descriptions about what you have said the state of things are. And I would just like to point out that is a large reason why we have no confidence that you will in the future answer our questions, that you will in the future actually provide solutions to these problems that are happening, that you still haven't provided answers to in any sort of actual way.
I think you keep saying that we have to find a way we can continue to move forward, and we've given our ways for 33 days. It's been meet on demands, meet faculty demands, and staff demands. None of them are too out of the picture, and literally meeting none of them makes us realize that you don't understand, at least in our opinion, at least in the student opinion, everyone's end right now. And yeah, I know where students stand.
New topic from Liam.
I also just want to say, I study linguistics, and the English we is ambiguous. You've been using the word we and us a lot. You've been saying we are trying to preserve our mission. We are doing everything we can to maintain diversity. We are looking at ways to maintain diversity in Hampshire through this partnership. Who is this is a rhetorical question, but who is included in that we and who is not?
Do you have a response?
I'm happy. It's a question, so I'd like to answer it. So, it's. I'm sorry.
We were just saying it was a rhetorical question.
Oh, okay, then I won't answer it. Okay.
We reached the bottom of the stack.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to say anything before the meeting?
I have a question actually. Could we schedule another meeting possibly to have our questions answered?
Sure. I guess if I may, I felt like I answered questions. Might not have been the answers you may have not wanted, but I'm just trying to answer them the best I possibly can. So, yeah. Yes.
I think what we're asking is that you think about everything that we've said today and meet with us again and continue to talk after processing and thinking.
Happy to do so. Thanks. Yeah.
Marlon?
I mean, I guess it's fair, because I know we have another Hampshire Rise Up has a meeting later tonight, and a lot of us will be debriefing this with everyone and everything else. I guess I want to hear from you something I'm trying to give you the chance to have the last word, because I know what's on the subject to have on tonight's meeting.
Well, thank you, Marlon. There are very good conversations happening. People use the word merger. I don't use that word merger. I'm just saying that. And there are really potential, very interesting partnerships that would actually let us do more of what we want to do. That's what I'm working on. And I wish that it could be in a public space. When we are ready for it to be public, it'll be non-binding and public, and everybody will be engaged in this. But for right now, unfortunately, it has to be a pretty small group that's in those discussions.
You choose who's in that group. I just want you to remember that.
I totally understand. Yeah.
Can you tell us when those conversations can be had publicly?
I don't know when that will happen. I hope in the next 4 to 6 weeks. That's what I would hope. Yeah.
Until those conversations can be had, those answers are given, our demands are met, we still don't have that much confidence.
I know that. I know. Yeah. I know.
So you said that the deliberations that you are currently having closed room, once they are released publicly, will still be non-binding.
Mm-hmm.
Clarify that.
That means that anything we would be doing, we're committed to having a phase where it's non-binding, where if it's with a partner, remember there's also another community involved too, where we would be collectively understanding this and deciding, is this something that we really care about and worth pursuing? So that it would be a non-binding, deep public engagement and phase that we would be having.
Naya, Dory, and like the last call, and then it is it.
You talk about this public phase. Will this be with more than one potential partner, or will it be with one? Because if it is, this is again potentially a rhetorical question. If it is with one, that is not a choice. If it is with one, then you are saying either you take this thing or you're done, or there's no more Hampshire, and that is not acceptable.
Yeah, I was basically going to say that. I was just going to say that when you talk about the non-binding part, you're still talking about one entity that, of course, we have no idea who will be. You're talking about after having those conversations, then I don't understand when there's one party, you say a whole other community. That implies that there is one community that we are talking to, which implies that the decision has already been made, and what we're saying is that's not acceptable. Okay, well, you're welcome to clarify that, but I know you have to.
May I answer? Yes. I mean, there are multiple conversations that are happening. I wish in the real world we could have like everybody in and it's public, but I can tell you that no partner. We're going to have to, with the options committee, with the board, with conversations, we're going to have to, at some point, if we're lucky, decide on who we would want to go into a non-binding phase with. But no partners, it's not like you have, you do this with multiple partners in a public setting. It's just not the way any partner would do it. So that's unfortunate. So, all right, yeah.
Yeah, I do want to respect everyone's time. I guess, like, I don't know who to choose. But I guess at one point is that with every answer, I don't think the clearest answer we get is why can't representatives be having that conversation with you?
Yeah.
Why is it important?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Thanks. Thanks, you guys. Thank you. And happy to come back again. So, thanks. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.